Tires screeched across the cracked asphalt as I flung open the door, the humid air swallowing me whole, and his shouts dissolving behind me like smoke. I didn't even look back. My fingers tightened around the cold leather leash, the familiar weight of Max pulling urgently against my side, as if he, too, understood that we were escaping something rotten, something that had been festering for too long. The house behind us, once a place of whispered promises and shared laughter, now loomed like a carcass, gutted of every warm memory. His voice broke through the thick summer night, cracked and desperate. "You're not taking him! Max stays with me!" The audacity of it punched the air right out of my lungs, but I didn't slow, not even for a heartbeat. The porch lights flickered, weakly, casting a sickly yellow across the driveway where his brand new black Audi gleamed under the moonlight. He had always been proud of that car, polishing it like it was some kind of shrine, more attentive to it than he ever was to me during the last crumbling months. The thought planted itself deep and cold in my chest, a seed of reckless, electric fury, Max whined, sensing the thick, charged tension radiating from my body. I stopped by the car, heart hammering a brutal rhythm against my ribs, and turned to see him standing in the doorway, barefoot, wearing that ratty old hoodie I had once bought for him, back when I believed he was someone who deserved gifts. His face was red, twisted with the kind of anger born not from love, but from losing something he thought he owned. The memory of the text messages I'd seen the night before flashed in brutal, cutting images. Her name, her pathetic declarations of love, his promises that he would handle things. Handle me. Like I was just another loose end he had to tie up. I clutched Max's leash so tightly that my knuckles went white. The bastard had cheated, lied, made me think I was the crazy one when I started asking questions. And now, he thought he could take my dog? My best friend? No, he fucking couldn't. Dropped Max's leash gently, murmured a word that made him sit obediently by the curb, and stalked around to the driver's side of the Audi. The keys were still in the ignition. He had left it running in his panic to stop me. The stupidity of it almost made me laugh, a high, raw sound rising in my throat, but dying before it could escape. "You walk back inside," I said, my voice low and steady, slicing through the humid air, "and you forget you ever thought you could own me or him." He took one stumbling step forward, hand outstretched, mouth moving in silent protests, but I was already sliding into the leather seat. The interior smelled like him, cheap cologne, and betrayal, and I hated it instantly. But I loved the way the engine purred under my hands, powerful and waiting, the way my whole body seemed to buzz with the kind of energy that comes from standing at the edge of a decision that could either save or ruin you. I caught his stunned expression in the rearview mirror as I slammed the door shut and gunned the engine. Gravel spat out behind me in a savage spray as I tore out of the driveway, the leash tangling around my wrist as I reached over and yanked open the passenger side door. Max, loyal as ever, sprang in with a practiced leap, his body warm and solid against my thigh. We roared down the dark, empty street, the houses and streetlights blurring into streaks of meaningless color. Max whined once, nudging my elbow as if to ask, "What now?" I let out a breathless laugh that was half sob, half hysterical thrill. "Now, buddy," I said, wiping tears from my cheeks with the back of my hand. "Now we show him exactly what happens when you try to steal what's mine." Night swallowed us, fierce and alive as I floored the gas and headed toward the highway, not looking back even once. The Audi tore down the empty back roads like it had been waiting for someone to unleash it, the engine growling low and hungry beneath my hands. Max settled into the passenger seat, his head low, his ears flicking back with every bump and turn, but he didn't protest. He trusted me, more than I trusted myself in that moment. My heart was a riot in my chest, but under the chaos, a cold, clear purpose thrummed like a second pulse. I wasn't just running away. No, I was taking something from him, something he loved more than he ever loved me, something he polished and preened and bragged about to anyone who would listen. I was going to make him feel the gnawing emptiness he had tried to carve into me. The high beams cut through the heavy dark, lighting up stretches of cracked pavement and wild, overgrown trees. I didn't even know where I was going. All that mattered was the distance, the sharp, painful stretch of it, the miles unraveling between me and the wreckage I had left behind. A familiar song spilled from the speakers, something we used to blast on summer drives when we still played at being happy. I wrenched the dial and shut it off, the sudden silence thick as blood in my ears. Every memory of him tasted like ash now, even the good ones, maybe especially the good ones. They felt like betrayal, too. My phone buzzed in the cup holder, lighting up the darkened car with his name, his stupid lying name. I picked it up and, without looking, hurled it out the open window. It shattered somewhere behind us, swallowed by the night. A laugh burst out of me, sharp and broken, and Max barked once, startled, then settled again when he felt my hand brush his fur. Somewhere around the third or fourth turn, the adrenaline started to dip, and the real gravity of what I had done began to tighten around my ribs. I had stolen his goddamn car. It wasn't petty theft. It wasn't just a slap on the wrist. It was revenge, and it was a crime. And it tasted better than any kiss he had ever given me. I pulled into a deserted gas station, the fluorescents buzzing like a hive of angry bees overhead, and killed the engine. For a few minutes, I just sat there, breathing hard, staring at my hands curled around the steering wheel like claws. Max climbed over the console and pressed himself against my side, warm and solid and real in a world that felt like it was tilting off its axis. I pressed, my forehead against the cool glass of the window, fighting back the rising tide of panic. What the hell was I going to do? Drive forever? Hide out in some seedy motel until the cops found me? Mail the keys back to him with a note that said, "You deserve worse"? The rage that had carried me this far still burned, but underneath it, something, quieter and sharper, was growing. The certainty that I was never, ever going back to him, that even if I had to sleep in this stolen car for a month, I would rather do it than live one more second under his thumb. I popped the trunk and dug through the crap he always kept back there: soccer gear, jumper cables, a sad, balled-up hoodie that still smelled like old cigarettes and cheap beer. No overnight bag, no money. Of course not. He had always been the kind of idiot who thought he could bluff his way through anything. The wheels in my mind turned, slow but relentless. I needed cash. I needed a plan. But most of all, I needed to make sure he understood that he hadn't just lost a girlfriend or a dog. He had lost his pride, his favorite toy, his illusion of control. Max licked my hand, his eyes wide and trusting, in the dark. I smiled grimly and ruffled his fur. "Don't worry, boy," I whispered. "We're just getting started." The gas station attendant gave me a wary look when I went inside to buy a bottle of water and a map. I plastered on a brittle smile, the kind that says don't ask questions if you want to keep your teeth, and paid in cash, the last 20 crumpled in my jeans pocket. Outside, under the crackling lights, I unfolded the map on the hood of the Audi, tracing possible routes with a shaky finger. Somewhere far enough to disappear, somewhere small enough that no one would look twice at a girl and her dog and an expensive car she didn't quite seem to belong to. Behind me, a police cruiser rolled slowly past the gas station, its headlights sweeping across the cracked parking lot like the blade of a guillotine. My breath caught, but the cruiser didn't stop. It kept going, swallowed by the night. I exhaled slowly, folded the map with trembling hands, and climbed back into the car. "Let's go find ourselves a new life," I said, voice low and fierce. Max wagged his tail once, and I knew he was with me, no matter where we ended up. I turned the key, the engine rumbling to life like a wild thing set free, and peeled out onto the road without a backward glance. Ahead of us stretched miles and miles of dark, open road. Behind us, only broken promises and the ghost of a girl who had once believed in forever. The black ribbon of highway cut through the night like a scar, and I drove until my muscles ached and my eyelids fought to slam shut. Max shifted beside me, restless, sensing the storm still raging under my skin. Somewhere around 3 in the morning, I saw the crooked sign for a rundown motel blinking weakly in the distance, half the letters dead, the rest flickering like they might give up at any second. I pulled in without thinking, gravel crunching under the Audi's tires. The place smelled like mold and old regrets, and I couldn't have cared less. I just needed a few hours, somewhere to regroup, somewhere to figure out how to turn this reckless flight into a goddamn battle plan. Leaving Max curled up on the passenger seat, I stalked into the front office, the door creaking like it hadn't been oiled in decades. The guy behind the counter barely looked up from his ancient TV set, muttering about cash only, $20 a night, and no funny business. I shoved a crumpled bill into his hand and snatched the grimy key from the counter without a word. Room 7 smelled like mildew and sadness. The bed sagged in the middle like it was trying to swallow itself, and the single lamp by the window cast everything in a sickly, yellowish glow. I didn't even pull the bedspread back, just dropped onto the edge of the mattress, still fully clothed, staring at the cracked ceiling while Max hopped up beside me and pressed his head into my lap. My mind spun in vicious circles. Every second, I sat still, felt like I was bleeding momentum, like he was somehow getting closer even though I had torn myself away. Maybe by now he had called the cops. Maybe he was spinning some bullshit story about how I'd gone crazy, how he had tried to calm me down before I stole from him. The thought made my stomach turn. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't unstable. I was angry. And anger was a sharp, clean thing compared to the rotting lies he had tried to feed me for months. I stroked Max's fur absently, my mind sharpening around the truth. I wasn't just running from him. I was running toward something too. Freedom, vengeance, maybe even redemption if such a thing existed anymore. Sleep took me like a mugging, sudden, brutal, leaving me even more exhausted when I woke. Dawn was bleeding into the sky, gray and raw, when a banging at the motel door yanked me upright in a cold sweat. Max was already on his feet, growling low, his hackles raised. For one horrifying moment, I thought it was him. That somehow, he had found me. That he would kick the door in and drag me back by the throat to the life I had clawed my way out of. But it wasn't. It was worse. A man's voice called out, rough and impatient. "Sheriff's Department, open up!" The blood in my veins turned to ice. I clamped a hand over Max's muzzle and backed toward the bathroom, heart hammering so loudly I thought they might hear it through the door. The sheriff's voice came again, more forceful, rattling the thin wood of the frame. "We know you're in there. Cars out front." The Audi. That goddamn gleaming albatross. I had parked it right under the flickering neon sign like a goddamn invitation. My mind raced, calculating measuring options against consequences. If they took me in now, they'd hand Max over to animal control. He'd end up in a cage, scared and alone, waiting for a stranger who might never come. I'd rot in some holding cell while he mourned me. And that bastard, my ex, he'd laugh. He'd get everything he wanted. Again. No, not this time. I scanned the bathroom. A grimy window, barely big enough to squeeze through, but maybe just barely. I shoved it open, the frame groaning in protest, and pushed Max through first, whispering frantic encouragements as he scrabbled and tumbled onto the patchy grass outside. Then I hauled myself after him, heart slamming against, my ribs hard enough to bruise. Voices rose on the other side of the motel door, a sharp crash as they started to break it down. I hit the ground running, Max racing beside me, my sneakers slipping in the wet grass as we bolted around the back of the building. The Audi was a lost cause. I didn't even look at it. There was a thin line of woods behind the motel, dark and thick and tangled. Without thinking, I plunged into it, branches clawing at my clothes, tearing at my skin, Max keeping pace, his body low and fast. Behind us, the door finally gave way with a crash, and the shouts grew louder, angrier. I didn't slow down. Didn't dare. The woods closed in around us, swallowing the shouts and the lights and the cracked world I had left behind. Every breath burned my lungs. Every step was a promise that I was not going back. Not ever. Somewhere ahead, through the trees, I could see the faint glow of another road, maybe a highway. Salvation, or something like it, I whispered to Max through gritted teeth. Almost there, buddy. Almost there. And together, bruised and bloodied and breathless, we tore through the last of the trees and into whatever future was waiting for us on the other side. The road ahead was cracked and forgotten, nothing but an old service route shadowing the highway like a ghost. My legs screamed with every pounding step, lungs clawing for air. But I didn't stop, not even when the gravel sliced into the soles of my shoes, not even when my vision blurred with exhaustion. Max kept pace like a warrior, his sides heaving, his tongue lolling out, but he never once fell behind. He trusted me, and that trust burned brighter than the fear gnawing at my ribs. Somewhere, down the road, a battered old pickup rumbled past, its engine coughing like it might die any second. I didn't think. I just acted. I hurled myself into the ditch, dragging Max down with me, pressing us into the weeds and the wet earth. The truck barely slowed. No flashing lights, no sirens, just an old man and his bad luck engine disappearing into the gray dawn. I stayed hidden, listening to the heartbeat of the world, the soft hiss of wind through the grass, the distant hum of the highway, the slow, steady thump of my own blood pounding in my ears. No sounds of pursuit, no crashing through the trees behind us. Maybe they were still ransacking the motel room. Maybe they thought I was some scared little girl who wouldn't run far. Let them think it. Let them underestimate me. When the truck disappeared around the bend, I hauled myself out of the ditch, Max scrambling after me. My clothes were torn, my arms a map of scratches and bruises. But I didn't care. I looked at Max, at his bright, fearless eyes, and I felt something dangerous and wild unfurl inside my chest. "We're not done yet," I muttered, voice low and feral. "Not by a fucking long shot." We followed the side road, keeping low, keeping quiet, until we found a crumbling rest stop abandoned to the weeds. A single vending machine flickered under, a collapsing awning, and a dusty, sun-bleached payphone leaned drunkenly against a wall. I dug deep into my jeans pocket, fishing out a crumpled $5 bill from who knows when, and fed it into the machine. I didn't even check what I grabbed: a bag of stale chips, a bottle of lukewarm water. Just enough to keep Max going, enough to keep me moving one more mile. I sat with my back against the wall, the chips crackling between us, and for the first time since tearing out of that goddamn driveway, I let myself think about what came next. I couldn't keep the car. I'd known that from the second I peeled away from him. They'd track the plates, find it abandoned by the motel, connect the dots, let them find an empty shell of what he loved, stripped and gutted and left behind like he had tried to do to me. I wouldn't be there. I would be somewhere they wouldn't even think to look. I had a cousin 3 states over, someone who owed me more than a few favors and who didn't ask questions when blood showed through a smile. I could get there. I could start over. Max would have a backyard again, not just some cracked city sidewalk. I wiped my mouth with the back of my hand and stood up, joints aching, body screaming for rest I wouldn't give it yet. Max jumped up, beside me, wagging his tail tentatively, ready to follow me into hell if I asked him to. "Let's go," I said, tossing the empty chip bag into the wind. "Before someone notices we're still breathing." We walked. We kept walking. Past the cracked rest stop, past the bleeding sun clawing its way over the horizon, past the heavy, dragging weight of everything we had lost and everything we still might lose. I didn't have a car. I didn't have money. I didn't have a plan better than keep moving until we find something that doesn't hurt to touch. But I had Max. I had rage hot enough to burn down every bridge he tried to trap me with. I had the knowledge that I had taken something from him that he couldn't replace, that no amount of begging or bullshit apologies would fix. I pictured him standing there in front of that wrecked motel room, pacing, fuming, telling himself I'd come back with my tail between my legs. He didn't understand. I wasn't his. I wasn't anyone's anymore. And when I finally disappeared down that lonely road, Max at my side, I wasn't running from anything. I was running toward myself.